So, organizational patterns for informative speeches. Organizational patterns just means how are you going to organize it? And what is the system that you've really organized the body of your speech or the main points of your speech? So there is chronological, chronos meaning time, right? So chronological, spatial coming from space. That's the root word here. Topical coming from topic, narrative or story, and then cause and effect. So these are like, especially for an informative speeches, these are the best way to organize them. Either chronological, spatial, topical, narrative, or cause and effect. And we'll get into each of these. So particularly, how are you going to organize your main points? Okay. So chronological leads the audience through a step-by-step process. So like how to bake a cake, how to catch the bus, how to do something, quote unquote, a how to would probably be chronological. First you do this, second you do this, third you do this, right? And this is a good way to organize something, right? It makes sense. Also, history. So something historical would also be chronological. So probably somebody's life. If you picked a person to talk about, you might organize their life chronologically, right? When early life, childhood, uh, early life, childhood, stardom, their first two albums, success, and today. You know what I mean? So how you might organize a person's life. And then also spatial. And so the root word here is space. So how could you talk about something in terms of its physical or directional relationships? So example here would be, so someone was talking about a hurricane, like what is a hurricane? And they broke it down in terms of space. They talked about the outer wall of the hurricane, the inner wall of the hurricane, and then the eye of the hurricane. So they're doing spatial organization and they're moving in. They're moving from the outside in, right? Or you could talk about something locally at the state level and nationally, right? It's kind of like a spatial organization, or the food of California, and you could talk about Southern California and the Bay Area and Northern California, something like that, or Southern California diet, Northern California diet, right? Something like that. And spatial is actually a good way to organize something. I had a good speech on the Mob Museum, and she had organized a speech by floors. So here's what you'll expect to find on the first floor. Here's what you'll expect to see on the second floor, and then the third floor. So it worked really well for her main points. So don't overlook spatial. By far, the most common way to organize an informative speech is topical. So regardless of what you're talking about, you most likely could break it down into 3 subtopics or 2 subtopics, right? So if I was talking about shoes, right, how could I organize shoes into subtopics, right? I could say like, by purpose of shoes. So I could say my work shoes and my club shoes or something like that. My work shoes and my dress shoes, right? Or my work shoes, my dress shoes, and my exercise shoes, right? So I've taken shoes and I've divided it into three subtopics. Also if I took, Lake Mead, right? So I talked about, if I wanted to talk about Lake Mead, I might say, I talk about the history of Lake Mead or the Hoover Dam, how it was built, the activities that you can do at the Hoover Dam, and finally some interesting plants and animals, or maybe just like the importance of the Hoover Dam, the significance of the Hoover Dam. So I could do the history, the significance, and things that you could do at the Hoover Dam, something like that. But you're organizing it into these subtopics, and when you do that, that's topical. That's topical. Appropriate for almost any informative speech, yes. by far, it's the most common way to organize a speech. Even a person, if you're talking about a person, you could also organize topically, right? You could talk about their, their craft. So if I was talking about LeBron James, right, I could talk about LeBron James on the court, LeBron James as a philanthropist and person in the community, and LeBron James, the family man, something like that, right? So you could kind of divide up the person into these topics that they also cover, right? So topical, again, is by far the most common way to organize a speech, particularly an informative speech. What you don't want to do is do a topical for your persuasive speech. I'll tell you that right now. So because it just comes across as informative, right? And we want to be persuasive. But the most common way to organize an informative speech is definitely by subtopics.